Hello everyone, Steve here, back again with another tabletop baseball video. So it's been a busy week here at the Etzel household and an expensive week with some house repairs. So what better time to talk about something free? So before I dive in, this thought occurred to me. I spend a lot of time analyzing baseball games, baseball sims, picking them apart, seeing how they could be better, seeing how accurate they are, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to flip that coin over today with this video. So Keith from the Delphi forum sent me an email about a game, technically two games, but a game that you can find in an old newsletter called Tabletop Sports. And this newsletter, as you can see on the screen, was published in the mid to late 70s. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was four years it was published. And you can actually download these newsletters by going to the Tabletop Sports website, and coincidentally named perhaps. But in any case, in the Tabletop Sports newsletter, a guy named John Swistack Jr. Published a free game he called Grandslam. Now, this is not related to a couple other games called Grandslam, including one that I did a video on a couple of years ago. But anyways, it was called Grandslam, and I'm going to talk about that game here in a moment. I'm also going to talk about another game called Baseball Manager, but hold your thoughts on that one. So as per typical, I put up this slide. I'm going to put these links in the description to this video. The first one is a more or less direct link to the newsletters that I just mentioned. Another is a link to a video I did. There were actually two of them, but this is part one of a video I did about baseball sim design considerations, which you may find interesting. And then there's a very brief Board Game Geek entry about a game that I'm going to talk about later called Baseball Manager. This PowerPoint will be available if you're interested. Just let me know and I'll put it on my Google Drive. Comments are always welcome. I think it enhances the hobby when we communicate about these topics. Like and subscribe if you want. It's really up to you. Sometimes I talk a little slow, so the gear up above says if you want to speed up the replay to about 1.25, that might save you a few minutes of your life. My email address is also at the bottom here in case you want to reach out to me directly. Enough about that. So, the early years of the hobby are rife with what I'm calling simplistic baseball sims or simplistic games. And most commonly, they use 2d6 dice, which has inherent problems. So what you see on the left, I've talked about this before, is when I was, I guess you could say, junior high school, I wrote down some simple rules about a baseball game, balls and strikes based baseball game. And sure enough, if you played it, it felt like baseball, although there were no customized players at the time other than maybe pitcher hitting was a little different. I've got videos on this game, particularly in terms of what it's evolved to today, which is a more modern version with customized player cards. I also did a video about these types of games you see on the right. You'll see them sold from time to time in places like Etsy. Again, they use 2d6 dice. The one on the right really doesn't do a good job of replicating baseball, mainly because with 2d6 dice and the way they're read here, which I think is low to high, you're just not going to get the sufficient precision to refine the results to produce a logical baseball game. This particular baseball game will result in pretty high scoring, which, if you're playing with your 7-year-old kid, that might actually be a lot of fun. So I built this graphic over the last couple of weeks. What are the requirements for a baseball sim? And this is not exhaustive, but I split it apart. The batter's on the left and the pitcher's on the right. And with the batters, what I'm talking about here is any customized rating or depiction of the batters, for specific players. So I think above the line here, I think, you should have an accurate walk rate for the batters. You should be able to produce an accurate batting average and then produce an accurate replication of their hit mix. And more or less the same with the pitchers. You need an accurate walk rate for the pitchers, batting average against for the pitchers, and ideally some replication of the mix of hits that they gave up, either all extra base hits or at least the home run rate. In the middle here, you have the game engine, which you need some sort of game engine, and elements of that are the flow. You may have cards or charts. I talked about precision, but you need a minimum amount of precision in order to accurately depict the game. You need some method, some randomizer or activation method, so dice or FACs or spinners or random number tables, whatever. I guess I already said charts or FACs again. And then you need to decide if you're going to have splits. And in the context of this whole thing, you need to, I think, at least have the players be rated accurately relative to each other, if not perfectly accurate in an absolute sense. And I fully understand there are different definitions of accuracy, but we'll leave that for others or for another time. On the batter side, below the line, we have things like fielding ratings. We have the out mix, which could include their ground out and fly out or air out tendencies. Most sims try to depict a batter's strikeout rate, if you will, although it probably isn't as important as some of the other things up above. And some sims, try to replicate the tendency for batters to hit into double plays. And then, of course, there are speed, base running speed, or advancement ratings, and stolen base ratings. Sometimes those are combined into one. And within stolen bases, of course, there can be jump ratings and so on. Sometimes some sims have the batters influence the times they get hit by pitch, which for Ron Hunt would be important. And then you could have throwing arm ratings for catchers and outfielders. On the pitcher side, the additional ones, again, are the out mixes, particularly strikeouts, the ability to hold a runner in the event of a base stealing attempt, endurance ratings, hit batsman ratings. Pitchers can have their own fielding ratings. And then, of course, wild pitches, balks, and pass balls. There may be a rating for that for the pitchers. In some respects, I've ranked all these things below the line in order of importance. Don't hold me to that, but in any event, there you have it. So, John Swistak, unfortunately, he just passed away a few years ago, but I was able to find his obituary, which I've replicated here. And John was a member of SABR. He has quite a professional resume, I guess I would say, and it talks about his baseball interests down below, including his fandom of the New York Giants and the Boston Red Sox. Okay, here's his game called Grandslam. What you see here is a screenshot from the newsletter. And in one of the newsletters, he published the 1961 rosters. And here you see two 1961 AL teams. The pitchers are on the bottom. The batters are on the top. Looks like he did 14 batters and 10 pitchers. You see their positions. I think there are the asterisks indicate single asterisk is left-hand batter, double asterisk in case of Mickey Mantle, I guess, is switch hitter. And then there's some very abbreviated ratings, which we're going to talk about on the next page. So, rulebook. This screenshot I have on the left, going down the left-hand side of this chart, is the grand total extent of the rules about how you play this game, Grand Slam. And I'll explain how you play Grand Slam starting now. So what I've excerpted here is a batter from the Tigers, Norm Cash, and a pitcher, Whitey Ford, from the Yankees, of course. And the first step is you look at the rating, the leftmost rating in their rating code. And it's basically a batting average rating, that leftmost rating. And so you have the batter's batting average rating, and then you have essentially a pitcher adjustment to that. It's always positive. Low number is for the pitcher is better for the pitcher. High number for the batter is better for the batter. In this specific example, you add the two together and you get number 16, and that tells you which column to look at on the result chart. We'll talk about the ratings here in a minute, but that pitcher rating is basically an ERA-based rating. Pitchers did have an endurance factor, which is the second number 8 after the dash in Whitey Ford's rating. Catchers effectively had a default arm rating of 1. Batters had a letter rating. In case of Cash, it's G for power, which is essentially a home run rating. And then they had a stolen base rating, which for Norm Cash was a 2. And that's it. So here's the game engine. On the previous example, we said we added Whitey Ford's 3 to Norm Cash's 13, and we got 16. And so we roll 2d6 dice, and in apba style, we read them as a 2-digit number down the right or left-hand side of the chart. This is just an excerpt of the chart. And it goes from 11 to 66. And column 16, you see here, has various codes here, like S is a single, SF is a fly ball with potential for being a sacrifice fly, and the 8, of course, is for center field. The K is a strikeout, the W is a walk, and then you may have certain codes here that are PC, and pardon me for the pause, but my electricity just went out momentarily. But fortunately, I have a battery backup on my laptop, as well as a battery. And if you have a PC result, you roll one more time, the 2 dice, and you go to the power chart, and you read the appropriate column of the power chart, and that's where you're going to get home runs, which are H, but you are going to get some outs, but you're going to get doubles and triples and whatnot. And I didn't circle it here, but Norm Cash was column G, so we would be reading from column G. Column A are basically singles hitters, and on the right side of the chart are the more extra base hit or power guys. The other thing that's interesting that's built into these charts, both the result chart and the power chart, is base runner advancement. So in the result chart, if it's a single, runners are going to advance 1 base, and if it's a double, runners are going to advance 2 bases. The exception is that if there's 2 outs, then they'll advance the extra base. So 2 base advance on a single and 3 base advance on a double. In the case of the power chart, the base runner advancement is essentially the extra base automatically. So that was just kind of an interesting thing. I'm no expert on base runner advancement and the best way to do it in a sim, but this is pretty straightforward and simple. And, give the guy credit for building a pretty concise sim. I wasn't going to do a lot of analysis on these charts, but that first chart, the result chart, I did just compare column 12, which is kind of in the middle, and column 24, which is to the very far right. And you can see that column 12, which would be like a 8-rated hitter and a 4-rated pitcher, would be 12. There are going to be 9 what I call equivalent hits on this chart, which, if I calculated it right, is about a 272 implied batting average when you take out the walks from the plate appearances. And then column 24 is pretty unrealistic. I mean, maybe if you had Ted Williams pitching against, a position player, maybe this is what his chart would look like. But you can see as you progress left to right on the result chart, there are more references potentially to the power chart. And let's go on to the power chart. So I've diagrammed here the leftmost and the rightmost power chart columns, and in both cases, there are 18 hits out of the 36 dice roll chances. So anytime you hit the power chart, you have 50% chance of getting a hit. But you can get other types of outs as are shown here. I did find it interesting that the singles hitter strikes out more than the home run hitter, but so be it. But you can see the singles hitter, he has maybe one or two chances of getting a home run off the power chart, whereas the home runs kind of dominate the guy on the right, the J. If I'm reading the order of the chart correctly, yeah. So that's how the sim works. There's one more chart, a simple stolen base chart, and they basically also make a distinction. It's harder to steal third and a lot harder to steal home. And that's really it. So if we go back to the requirements for a baseball sim, I've highlighted in green what this Grand Slam game does as far as the specific individualized batter ratings and individualized pitcher ratings. And all it does is basically incorporate batting average for batters, and through the power rating, it incorporates something about their hit mix. And for pitchers, all they're really influencing is the batting average against, and they have an endurance rating. Oh, and the batters have a stolen base rating. And then as it relates to the middle column, the 2d6 dice is the randomizer. Player rosters are in charts. No FACs, no individualized player cards. And that's the game. So the question really is that enough? Is this Grand Slam model enough to have a game that looks and feels like baseball? So I don't always do this with games that I analyze, but I decided to play a couple games. So the first game is I used the two 1961 teams that I mentioned earlier, an actual game as best I could with as-played lineups, and it was the Yankees at Detroit. And so here you see the game. The pitchers were Turley for the Yankees, and his leftmost rating was a 6. And for the Tigers, it was Larry, and he was a 4. So Larry was better. And so I played the game. And I started to get a little concerned in the bottom of the first inning because there were 3 walks. And I think it was just the roll of dice. As we all know, that can happen. But if you look over to the right, I've kind of summarized. The game ended up 5-1 in the favor of the Tigers. Tigers had 8 hits, and then we'll talk about errors in a minute. Yankees 1 run on 6 hits from a solo home run and from the Moose. And in the end, the Tigers got 4 walks and the Yankees got 2 walks. So, on average, that's not out of the ordinary. And there weren't really a whole lot of strikeouts, but be different in today's game, but that's probably not unusual. And then there were 5 total doubles across both teams. The one thing that was kind of odd is in the charts, he has a single plus an error result, and there were 2 of them in this game, one for each team. Yes, one for each team. So, but, it felt like baseball. So I played another game. This time it was the 1977 World Series. So in a later newsletter, he published some other rosters, including the full 1976 roster and the full 1977 roster. So I played the 1977 World Series Game 1. I actually had the pitcher's bat, which I don't remember if that happened in the real life game or not. So we had 2 4-rated pitchers, Sutton and Don Gullett. And again, overall, another reasonable game. We had the Yankees winning 4-2. The Yankees had 9 hits. The Dodgers had 6. The Dodgers had 1 home run, which, where did that occur? That was Steve Garvey, solo shot in the 4th. The Dodgers had 3 walks. Yankees had 2. I don't think that's particularly unusual. And there were 8 strikeouts and 5 strikeouts. Again, not completely unusual. Most of the hits in this game were singles. I see there's a couple doubles. Davey Lopes had a couple doubles. But once again, we had 2 single plus error results. So that was kind of, to me, the only odd thing in this game. I did pinch hit for Sutton in the top of the 7th. Lee Lacy struck out. And then I had Sosa come in and pitch in the 7th. And he was rated only a 2, so he only added 2 to the batter's rating to determine the initial result chart. So yeah, that's the game. It felt like baseball, and kudos to the guy for what he developed, and kudos for giving it away for free. The other thing he gave away for free is the formulas. And I started to reverse engineer the formulas, and it's like, oh yeah, he gave away the formulas. I don't need to do that. And basically, the stolen base rating is just based on, generally speaking, on how many stolen bases they had in the season. The batting average rating is based on what's called adjusted batting average. I'll talk about that in a minute. The power rating is based on home runs per hit. So it's a hit mix type rating. And then ERA is the basis for the pitcher rating, or adjusted ERA. Now, why is it adjusted? In this newsletter, over the years that it was published, there were more than one article talking about normalization, which is still a topic that we have here 50 years later. There is a partial normalization going on here, and you can pause the video if you want, but basically they do adjust the player's batting average a bit and try to migrate it toward a league batting average of 271 and a league ERA of 3.96. But it's not a complete adjustment. It's like a half adjustment. In any event, that's how it works. It's very simple. And as we saw, the game itself is very simple. So, interestingly, the same guy uh, came out with a game called Baseball Manager in 1980. And you can see an image of it here. And somehow he published it or released it through a company called Wichita Game Company. Like many games in that era, they came just photocopied and put in a folder. But again, it works. What's interesting about this game is that it's more or less the Grand Slam game, but advanced. And so even he saw the need apparently to add more customization to the players. And so this is another screenshot I downloaded from somewhere, and I've kind of highlighted here how they expanded the ratings. So the rating on the left is still the batting average rating. The rating on the right is still the speed rating. The rating in the very middle is still the power rating, the letter. But then he added a customized rating for triples and a customized rating for home runs. So that's what they did with the batters. And you see on the left 1909 Pirates and on the right 1922 St. Louis Browns. Okay, by 1988, and this happens to be the 1988 Pittsburgh roster, notwithstanding the typo in Pittsburgh. And what you see here is the game evolved further. So there are fielding ratings and catcher arm ratings. There are now the asterisk in the middle is a rating that will allow certain batters to reflect a higher than average walk rating. And in this case, this Randy Milligan guy had a 19% walk rate per plate appearance. So he's definitely getting the asterisk. That's more or less double the normal rate. You can see that they've also put in individual ratings for left-right splits by then. And so that's quite interesting. For the pitchers, they do now have a customized home run rating so they can influence positively or negatively the rate of home run occurrence. And they also have left-right splits. And the pitcher also has a strikeout rating, which is the K. I think they have a walk rating, which is a W, but none of the Pirate pitchers had a W. Yeah, and I'm not sure in the lower right-hand corner what all's going on with those ratings in parentheses or what have you. But as you can see, the game evolved quite a bit over the years, and when it became commercialized, they added a lot of enhancements. Now the core game engine still works the same, but yeah, that's the evolution. So you can see here the result chart looks a little bit different, but I've circled the K and the W, so if those occur, then instead of in the item circled, instead of a sacrifice fly, in column 16, it's going to be a W for a walk if it applies, and a K for a strikeout. But the result chart more or less works the same. And again, it's 11 to 66 down the side. I've only put 10 rows of the chart here. Still have the power chart, but as I said, you now accommodate people who hit a lot of triples or people who hit even a higher rate of home runs. The columns are still the same, A through J. Interestingly, if it is a triple, then it's a triple. Otherwise, it defaults to a double. And if it's an H applies, the H rating applies, it's a home run. Otherwise, that's going to be a single. So a lot of other games kind of work that way. Some people prefer a home run to be interchanged with a double. but there may have been design reasons why he didn't do that. Also for Baseball Manager, they added the typical charts for sacrifice, suicide squeeze, hit and run, infield in, and a fielding mechanism. And there's now fielding ratings. So that's Baseball Manager. So again, if I bring up the scorecard one more time, I've tried to highlight in green the things that are now incorporated into the game, and there's a lot more green there than what was originally there, and all three items above the dotted line on each side are addressed in some way. So, arguably you've met the minimum requirements for, a basic baseball sim. So, also interesting to me when I did my research is the Baseball Manager game became computerized. And so they made it available on a cassette tape or a floppy disk for the Apple II computer. And you can see the disk drives, external disk drives over there on the left. I worked with that computer. And then, of course, the TRS-80 computer on the right. And that's where the cassette tapes were one of the primary input mechanisms for the TRS-80. And I played with that as well. My nephew had one. And at the time it was $25, which was not cheap. But that was an interesting aside to all this. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. I think it opened my eyes a little bit in terms of what is or is not sufficient to make a playable baseball sim. And this one obviously would be very simple. Obviously, it probably didn't catch on too well. I will say as well with Baseball Manager, he again gave rating guidelines as to how to do the ratings. So it would not be that hard to build a spreadsheet to create rosters of players and play a game. It's obviously very portable. I'll just close by saying, there's not a lot of information available out on the internet for Grand Slam and Baseball Manager. I did find one Delphi forum comment here, but that was really about it. So thanks for listening. Again, comments are welcome. Like and subscribe if you're so inclined, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.